You're listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box, where you get the inside scoop on the steps action takers and decision makers take to align their purpose to their principles and achieve their goals in business and life. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. Each week, you'll hear from remarkable guests who have overcome challenges and obstacles to succeed in the face of adversity. By listening to their stories, you'll get practical tips, tools, and resources you can implement today to bust through your own internalized prisons of worry and doubt. And now, without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hey, welcome to this episode of the No Labels, No Limits podcast, a podcast all about helping action takers and decision makers like you align their purpose to their principles and achieve their goals in business and life. Hi, I'm Sarah Box, executive coach, nonprofit consultant, and best-selling author. And more importantly for me right now, the founder and chief vision Sherpa of Sarah Box Coaching and Consulting. And I'm here to tell you that the life you want is possible with the right support, mindset, and strategy. And with that in mind, let me tell you a little bit about today's guest. Matthew Solomon is the coach for the modern soul, a relationship and empowerment coach, facilitator, and best-selling author who operates from his experience that we are in a relationship with everyone and everything. As an award-winning filmmaker, author, and father of three, he's found that none of what he had learned is being taught in schools, so he puts everything that he has learned into his coaching. He is also the author of an Amazon #1 new release, Man School, Relating with Women in the Me Too Era. And Matthew has been a guest on over 40 TV, radio, web, and podcast episodes. In this episode, you'll learn how you can be empowered by the possibility of experiencing true connections, how to practice a new way of listening and feeling heard, and how you can discover new ways of experiencing life. And you're also going to learn how you can get some free coaching time with Matthew. So now let's just get to it and welcome our guest, Matthew Solomon. Hi, Matthew.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to this interview for a while now. I had to get you on the calendar because you were kind of busy guy. So I'm glad this worked out.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with nothing going on.
There is a lot going on with nothing going on. Let me ask you though, before we get going into everything that's going on, can you share with us a non-negotiable or ritual that you do daily that keeps you heading towards your goals and your big vision?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? The non-negotiables, and then we have this whole upheaval in the world, and suddenly it's like, oh wait, I missed a day. Usually it's going for a walk. Walking in my neighborhood or somewhere, just getting outside. Actually, getting outside is a non-negotiable. I have to get outside at least once or twice a day. At times it's been morning meditation. At times it's been evening meditation. One thing is I was raised Jewish, and unfortunately my mom passed away in March, and so I've been doing a Jewish ritual every night, which is saying Kaddish for my mom. And so that's definitely a non-negotiable, although not career focused or business focused, but it's just something that I felt called to do, that I'm doing. Oh, I can't hear you.
It does keep you true to who you are, though.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think sometimes we can focus our non-negotiables on business or career when in truth, sometimes for opinion, non-negotiables that keep us true to who we are so that we can show up well are almost the most important. I mean, I totally resonate with getting outside and walking, and being outside. Because boy, you can go crazy when you can't. And have you been able to get out at all, Matthew?
Oh yeah. We're I've definitely been able to get out. I'm in Los Angeles, so we wear masks and all of that. And But I tend to go with the less busier time. It's really bizarre. Like when everything first started, and I would look out the window and I would see people walking, like a lot more people than usual walking or jogging, but there was that noticeable distance, and it was like, wow, it's just odd. Visually, it's not anything that we've ever seen before. But to answer your question, I usually go earlier in the morning or later at night when there's fewer people. I always like doing that anyway, just because I'm more, by myself at those times.
Solitary kind of event.
Yeah.
But I have noticed, same in our area too, a lot of families walking, where you'd see sometimes one of the members walk and they take their dog. But I'm watching all the family go and all the dogs go. And the dogs are going, please, I stay home. So anyway, let me ask you, how did you come to do the work that you're doing today? What actually brought you here?
Oh, how much time do we got? It's
dive in.
It's really my life path. It's not what I intended to do. It's not what I thought I was going to do. I grew up in Los Angeles. I was always in and around the entertainment business, and I was a music major in college, and I played in bands and had long hair, and played every club on the Sunset Strip, and had local success as a musician. And then I fell into acting, and was in probably 100 or so commercials, and then I started writing, and I started writing and directing short films and a feature film. And so I'd always been in the entertainment business. Growing up in LA, the schools that I went to were very mixed as far as race, religion, sexual orientation. I grew up in West Hollywood. And so I grew up with everyone and was very aware at a young age that my experience as a white male was different from my friends. And so I was always really interested in that. And being Jewish, even the area that I grew up in and the temple that we went to, it was different. Like the temple that we went to was in Beverly Hills, but I grew up in West Hollywood. So I was always kind of like we're similar, but we're different. And when I was in music school, I went to University of Southern California. I got really interested in sociology. And so I started studying sociology and anthropology and how civilizations get created and laws and the justice system and systemic racism, all at the same time that the Rodney King beating happened, the LA riots happened, the O.J. Simpson trial. And so all of this cultural awareness at that time led me down this other path where I was working in entertainment, but I was studying about social justice issues, also trying to figure out why my relationships weren't working. So I was doing all this relationship work around communication and partnership and how to be a better man and what do women mean when they say that thing, but and so I was always in seminars and workshops and reading books. And so somewhere around, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I had been taking professional and personal development workshops through a company called Landmark Worldwide. And I was trained as a coach there. I was trained to lead programs and seminars and those sorts of things. And so somewhere around 5 years ago, I started coaching. I was meditating. And in my meditation, I heard this voice that said, a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. You need to start sharing it. So I started coaching individuals and then couples. And then I was doing, the social justice work and involved in that. And then a couple of years ago, I was invited to an organization that was having racism incidents. And they had seen my book, they had read my column in the Good Men Project. They saw how I interacted with people online. And they're like, we think you can make a difference here. And so I went and I listened and I identified what the problems and solutions were. And I created a program. And so then I started doing work for organizations. It's basically the relationship model, but expanded to like how do in a college, faculty, students, and staff connect and have a more inclusive experience, or going to a corporation and how do the staff and the executives connect and have a more inclusive, not just racially, sexually, gender, like all of that, but how do we really hear each other and work together in a way that has everybody win? And so that's the work that I've stepped into, and it's been, at this point, I'm 47. So, 27, almost 30 years of my own personal journey has led me to what I do now.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Because it's so interesting to listen to you talk about all of that and the confluence of that into kind of like where and who you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just think about, like, as you were describing that, being a young man growing up in all those kind of like different rivers that come together, and you're going, oh, interesting. That one
Mm-hmm.
is that way, but we're all here together. Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
And I did leave out. I was also married for almost 9 years, and I've been divorced 9 years, and I have 3 kids. So, a teenager and 2 preteens. So there's that part of it too.
that may be an extra whole long conversation.
Yeah.
But let me ask you to talk to us about your relationship model, because it sounds like it not only applies, like you were talking about, the individual couple, and then organizationally, just for, systemically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about the basics of that a bit? Like, what's the framework? What have we been missing, I guess?
Well, that's a great question, because the truth is we're not taught how to have relationships. We're not taught how to communicate. We're taught how to debate. Like, we value debate and being right and winning. But if you look at what we do in school, it's like there's no communication classes that teach us how to like listen and hear and feel, or express ourselves, really. Like, my kids grow up with use your voice, but there's no like hear what the other person is saying and connect with them. So we have that, and then we're thrown out into the world, and it's like, okay, go get married and have babies, and good luck, and all of that. So what we miss really is each other. We miss the ways that we can hear each other without, like if we're having a conversation and you're sharing something with me that's really important to you, ordinarily I would be listening for, how am I going to respond, or what do I need to say, or what can I do to fix it or fix you, or whatever. But when we learn, and what I teach is how to really listen and hear what you're saying, and then respond to you in a way that has you feel like you've been heard and you feel valued, because, wow, this person's really hears me and is understanding and making the effort. And so when we feel heard, valued, and understood, then we like really open up with each other. And then like we almost become, it sounds cliche, but we kind of become one, where we can really look at, okay, well, what's the solution here? Or does there need to be a solution? Maybe you just needed to feel heard. And so, that's when I work with couples. When I work with couples, I usually start with just having them sit and face each other and just connect, like just breathe, And so all the stuff that's in the way that you've been holding on to for years, and the angers and the judgments and the frustrations, usually that melts away within a few minutes. And it's like, then we can actually like talk and hear and share. And so I take that into corporations and colleges and organizations, and have the participants in my work do that. And then I teach them how to listen, and 9 times out of 10, the response that I get is it's one of the most profound experiences they've had.
So when you were starting to explain that process of like really listening, and or so that someone can feel they've been heard, I can also see someone learning to do that. So I could listen to you so that you feel heard, but I'm still not helping myself learn from that, right? I may not value what you said. In my head, I may be running a separate, like, oh man, I can't believe Matthew said that. Are you kidding me? That wasn't my fault. Why? I may not be outwardly expressing that. So what do we do? And I know I've done that. And then there's times when I've actually heard myself doing that and saying, really? No one requires that. Just listen, But how does someone on the other side of that actually recognize that they've been understood and valued? Am I Because I don't think it's just a one-way thing, is it?
No, it's not. And that's, so you're asking how the listener feels that they've been heard and understood?
Well, I understand the process of, if you were saying something, I would know that I know how to reflect back to you so that you would know, especially I'm not cutting you off, there's
Right.
a hint.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but also that I understood, whether or not I agree with you, I understood and I value you for, maybe not even what you said so much, but you as Matthew, so because that's what I'm feeling sometimes, that people practice the outward, but they're not necessarily embracing what that means to actually be in a relationship.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. It comes down to really being committed to me. Like if you're the one that's sharing and speaking and I'm listening, like my goal is to really get what your experience is, to get how you feel, why you feel that way, what you want to have happen, or what didn't happen that you wanted to have happen. So it's your experience, your commitment, so I'm as the listener, I'm coming from a place of curiosity, like really wanting to get your world. And so you'll share things with me, and I may, say back to you, wow, I get how frustrating that is, because, when you said this, and this, like, that's completely frustrating, or angry, or excited. Like maybe you're sharing something you're really excited about. And so I'm using those experiential words in connecting what your experience is, so that once you feel like, wow, he gets what I'm feeling and understanding and dealing with, that you feel like you have this feeling of, wow, I felt heard and understood and valued.
Got it.
So that's how you would experience that, is you would feel it.
Yeah.
It would be a tangible, like noticeable sensation or group of sensations. And then for me, like if you're sharing something that I disagree with, my first goal is to really get your experience and the why. And then, it may be, I would start asking questions like, is there something more that you want? Did you just want to feel heard? Are you interested in feedback? So it's always the inquiry, versus I'm just going to tell you what I think. Because once I just tell you what I think, we're done. There's no like.
Oh my gosh, we are done.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways. I mean, sometimes you can start getting into it. It's like, well, and you ask your questions and the person just says, no, I'm done. I just wanted to tell you that. I just wanted to get it out, right? You're thinking, oh man, I'm thinking we had to solve something. No. I wasn't looking for a solution. Just wanted to share.
Yeah.
So,
and that happens a lot. And that's, when we were talking about my journey through, relationships, it's very traditional that men are the fixers. But it's a different flavor on the other side, where, it happens equally. It's just labeled differently.
Okay, you're true. It's true. I'm just calling myself out on that. It's true.
Yeah.
And it is labeled different because women show up different.
Yeah.
And with each other, we don't notice it as much. With women, I mean, I've noticed, I'll be in groups of women and we'll be talking, and we basically are collectively problem solving. We do it differently and it feels differently. And I think sometimes that's where it's just, and you guys do too. You guys communicate differently, which is A-okay. But we do get our wires crossed sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm curious, has all of your learning and lessons, and now you're coaching other people, are you feeling like it helps you with your preteens and teens?
It helps. It helps for sure. And it's, there's just, I haven't met anybody who's just like, yep, I got it all figured out. They're just with, any kind of relationship, there's different levels, and it's very different parenting an infant to a toddler to to preteen to a teen, and who knows as an adult. It's there are challenges, and as a parent, making the transition from like, I have to do everything for you, and I have to tell you what to do, and I have to like be more of a quote like dictator, to being more of a guide. Like, that's been the shift. And so, and there's the element of the teenager who doesn't want to hear a thing I have to say, thinks that I don't know what I'm talking about. Honestly, says things like, oh, you're this coach, and you don't even know how to talk. Like all of it. It just, everything's magnified and amplified, and it's worse when it's like it's your own family, because, oh my God, I can go into like 2,000 people, organizations or more, and lead these amazing workshops with all this great feedback. And then I go back home and it's like, why aren't the dishes done? Or whatever the case may be. So
it's humbling.
Yeah.
Tired of feeling stuck and ending with the same result? Want to know how Sarah can help you with one-on-one or organizational coaching? Then book your free discovery call at sarahbox.com/contact. Now, back to the show.
Can we talk about your book for a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. Sure. So what made you want to write the book?
Yeah, I mean, like everything, it just was something that came about through the process. So when in 2017, when the Me Too movement online happened, and Me Too was started by a woman named Tarana Burke in 2006 as a platform for Black women of color, to share their experiences of sexual harassment and rape and violence, to share their stories and to get support. And then in 2017, with the Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby and all of the high-profile Hollywood cases, and mostly women, some men, started sharing their Me Too stories, my timeline was flooded, on Facebook and Twitter and all of that, with all of these stories. Because I have always been friends with women, I have been listening, and I knew all of that was happening, and I knew statistically what was happening, and I had heard many of the stories, and yet seeing the magnitude of it, how many women that I knew were sharing, was humbling. I was in the process of writing a book regarding racism, and then this happened, and then I was getting in these conversations, and so typically, like, a woman would share her experience, and then there would be men who would start commenting, who would blame the victim or try and dismiss what her experience was, or deny, or add their 2 cents. And so I would start communicating with those men and sharing what women have shared with me, and helping them to try and hear her experience. And so along the way, women were like, oh my God, a man who gets it, we're exhausted. The men seem to listen to you. Please write a book or teach a class or something. And so I thought about a class, and I figured, men, we tend to like to, do things on our own and sit in the corner. So I wrote a book. And honestly, I had been so immersed in those conversations that I wrote the first draft in a weekend. And within a month and a half, I had, done the revisions and everything, and it was available. There was a publisher who was interested, but they were going to wait a year, because, they can only publish so many books, and I didn't want to wait. So I published independently through Amazon and then Ingram Spark, and it became a #1 new release in, I think it was 6 categories. And that was 2018.
Well, congratulations on the rise of the book, because that really speaks to the value of the book and what people are getting from it. So I haven't read the book, so just give me a sense, and I haven't gone in and read your sample on Kindle yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm owning that. But
Yeah.
for the other listeners who are thinking, hey, I might want to get a copy of that book, or I've been having trouble having these conversations, or maybe there are guys saying, I don't get it. What's math you see? What would I expect to get from reading the book? Like, how did you think it through? What's in it? It's broadly its structure, and what are you hoping people take away from it?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, it really, it comes from like what we were talking about listening and listening to understand another person's experience. And so, the basis of it is, it starts with, we're not taught anything. We're not taught anything about sex. We're not taught anything about communication or intimacy, and how we value debate over communication. And so, it starts there. It gets into what women have shared with me their experiences are in the world and have been, especially around safety issues and not feeling safe. And there was I was in a course. Allison Armstrong has a company called PAX, which is mostly for women. She has some courses for men, but it's understanding women, understanding men. And there was a course that I was in where it was men and women. And she asked the women, asked the men, raise your hand if you were in fear for your life at some point in the last year. And a couple of hands went up. And she said, what about the last month? And I don't think there were any hands up. And then she asked the women, how many of you have been afraid for your life in the last year? And pretty much every hand went up. And then she said, what about, a month ago? And there were a lot of hands. And so what about, and so she got down to today, and there were still like 6 or 7 hands that were still up, and it was Saturday morning at 11 o'clock in the morning. And so like seeing that really opened up for me that, wow, there is a different experience. It is a safety thing. There's a reason for that. And so I get into that. I get into, for men, how I break down the listening we were talking about. I break that down step by step. There's a chapter on that I've gotten amazing feedback from men from. And then we get into how do we want to develop ourselves as men? And the fact that, for me, I never really had role models as far as like, what's the archetype of the man that I want to be? We had, TV celebrities and athletes and movie folks, but nobody who really encompassed like, that's the man that I want to be. So as men, for me, like I've had to look at what are the qualities that I value? How do I want to show up? What's the impact that I want to have on the people in my life? And so I talk men through like how we can do that for each other. And so it's information, it's techniques and tools, it's how do we empower ourselves as men? Who do we get to become? That's basically the gamut of the book.
Thank you. I appreciate that you kind of pulling it apart like that, because it makes it more real. The title's compelling, but it's not as helpful as you describing it like that. And it's interesting. I've been in rooms where that question has been asked about safety, and it's you always get a similar response depending on the composition of the room, and it is surprising. I think it's really surprising.
Yeah.
And it's just something as women you're more familiar with, and then separate that out depending on where you live. It can feel even different. So I want to shift a little bit here. I know that you are a columnist for the Good Men Project, which is, I poked around a little to learn about that. It's pretty intriguing to me. Will you talk a little bit about that project, why it started, what it is?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know much about the history of it. It's an online platform. I liken it to like Huffington Post for men's issues, or not issues, but it's men centered, and there's topics, everything from relationships to mental health to racism to leadership. And so it's not just men that write or who are editors, but it's really it's an online publication that's for men. And they say, it's the conversation no one else is having. And so it's really an amazing platform. I started writing for them, and it was a pleasant surprise how much feedback I would get, or I would have people show up in my inbox or email me or want to connect with me because they read something that I wrote for the Good Men Project. So yeah, they've been amazing.
I encourage people to go check it out because there are some interesting articles on there, some great titles. But the one that I most recently read was, I wonder if I would have treated her like the cat did if she would still be here. But it's basically about how, the cat always, paid attention and stuff. And he didn't. But I mean, it was said honestly. It wasn't like a blame thing. It was just so genuine and reflective and humorous at the same time. I'm thinking, I bet that whole thing's totally sucked too. So, but it was interesting, and I was curious about your relationship with the Good Men Project.
Yeah.
So before we wrap this up, Matthew, you've generously offered to do some free coaching for folks. How do they take advantage of that?
Yeah, well, if just visit my website, coachwithmatthewsolomon.com. You can, shoot me an email through there. And then my book is available there. I also have a men's course, Man School, the online course. But yeah, through my website. And I do, if somebody's listening who's part of an organization who's interested in having me, I was going to say come there, but we're not traveling yet. You can reach me through there and we can set something up as well.
Hey, they can do it virtually. You could do a virtual meeting with them.
Yeah, things have shifted that way. And so my in-person workshops have become virtual.
But I'm hoping for the days of in-person again because it's more fun. It's more fun.
It's definitely more fun.
Well, Matthew, I want to thank you. We'll put links to all of your pages, your social, the book and everything in the show notes. So folks, I would say if you're driving, but you might not be. But if you're not where you can take notes, don't worry about it. They'll be in the show notes so that you can find Matthew. And Matthew, I just want to tell you what a fun interview it was. I'm so glad we got to connect today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a great time.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic vision coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. So please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Until next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.